Hey, Slàinté, y'all. Welcome to Scotch on the Bayou on one of our summer Sunday shows. Early in the day, if I can give you an excuse for day drinking in the States, I'm happy to oblige. I hope you have poured a couple of your favorite, perhaps SMWS bottlings to share with me and my guests today. Um, Super excited about this. As you know, we've had some time off this summer, and every Sunday we've done um, uh, of each month, rather, we've done a particular show to bring someone who's not on U.S. soil, but over there where all the magic happens, where the wonderful whiskey is made. And I'm really excited to have my guest on today because I feel like I've known him forever. And I'm very, very lucky that I have gotten to see him more often than probably most any of my whiskey friends here and over there. So just want to say hello and say good evening and afternoon to you too, Pete Head. Thank you for being here. Lovely to see you. And Rob is in. Hey, friend, we're about to crank up our Tuesdays again. Looking forward to that. Hope y'all are doing well. Scott on Scotch. Hey, great seeing you. Thanks for being in. And Donna is also in. I'm giving you a definitely a noontime day drinking opportunity, Donna. That's awesome. Really great to see you. So yes, Pete Head's already ahead of us here. He's got some lined up: a 35.308, 82.29, and a 53.314. If that makes no sense to you whatsoever, our next guest will be able to tell you the madness behind the numbers. And yeah, let's see if you do. I've got three as well. And they're all pretty potent. So I'm not sure I'll get through all. Well, I know actually I will. Small sips, get through all three of mine, Frank, for sure. But yeah, it's so good to see you. Whiskey Zone is in. Hello, and Slàinté to you, my friend, all the way from San Francisco. I'm so glad these West Coast folks are able to join us in the middle of the day. And an East Coaster, hey, Bill. Also, all our Isle of Whiskey folks too are here. So yeah, just thank you all for being here. And I'm going to let you know how much I absolutely adore this person. Our guest is John McCheyne, and he is all things whiskey and all things Scotland. And I want to say Scotland comes even above the whiskey part. Never will you meet someone who is a big a fan as Scotland as you will in John McCheyne. And Glasgow's probably right behind that, and whiskey's probably behind that. Just an absolutely fabulous person. And I would like to, all of y'all, raise your glass and a big old Slàinté y'all to the one and only Mr. John McCheyne. Cheers, friend.
Thank you, Leanne. What an introduction, and also true. Thank you very much. Scotland. I always say to people whenever I live in England now, and whenever I travel anywhere, and people say, "Where are you from?" I say, "I'm from Glasgow." So what are you talking about? You've lived in England for years and years. I said, it doesn't matter where I live. I am from Glasgow, and at the moment I'm home in Argyll. So I'm overlooking Loch Long.
Ah,
Fantastic. Thank you. Great to see you. And good to see all of those other people that I saw joining. Yeah, who I know well. Good stuff.
awesome. And see, Peter's in, and also Manfred from Bavaria. Thank you, Manfred. So good
Oh,
to read us
fantastic.
in. Bavarian Whiskey Freak. Oh, gosh. It's funny because everyone kind of has their YouTube name and their Instagram name, and it's like the matching game and trying to figure out who everybody
Oh,
is.
yes, yes.
But yeah, so this whole summer has been awesome for having these three different shows from Alistair Day, Rachel McNeil, and now you. All three of these shows and all three of you wonderful people came from my experience in 2019 at the Isla Whiskey Academy. And let me tell you, this girl did not know exactly what to expect, but she pretty much thought she had died and gone to heaven by the end of the week. So, that's something that I won't ever forget, and having that experience. I know there's quite a few in the chat, that and Rachel's in the chat. Hey, Rachel, good to see you.
Hi,
And
Rachel.
Hamish, I see you too. Daniel Hayes, also Isla Whiskey Academy alum. Once you see that and the experience that kind of thing, you make so many connections over whiskey that the whiskey almost becomes secondary. And so having you here and being able to get to know you more and better over the last 5 years, John, 5 years.
Incredible. And I've seen you twice over in your part of the world in the
You've
last
been
12
in my
months or so.
house. You've been to my house.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, just I was just thinking, who all would I want this summer? From Alistair starting on pure faith and family tradition of starting his endeavors and looking at him just being an absolute rock star. Rachel, who is the genesis of all things, whiskey and the Queen of Isla and presenting and putting people into the attendees' path like Alistair and like you, because you are an absolute, I would say you're the hood ornament of the Isla Whiskey Academy because you're right there up front and you're always there, which I love.
Yes. Yeah, I loved it. But I remember many years ago, Leanne, probably about 12 or 13 years, Rachel might have a better idea than me, but I met Rachel when I was there for the Faisail Festival. And we just seemed to hit it off right away. And we've been really good friends ever since, And what Rachel has done with the Isla Whiskey Academy, I just think is astonishing. And even before that, with her whiskey for girls and guys things, there's a lot of talk now about trying to bring whiskey to the female community because it's been regarded over many generations as kind of maybe too exclusive. Rachel started all of that.
Yeah.
There are some women in whiskey now who are promoting it very strongly, but Rachel was at the beginning of all of that. And the whole Isla Whiskey Academy thing was a new thing to happen, and it's been absolutely tremendous, as you know, and several of the people who are on the broadcast tonight will know as well because they've been.
Yeah.
And you were also talking about whiskey and people, and I think I said before when Rachel was on a few weeks ago that Rachel's the one who talks about in the Academy piece and quoting the drama about context and people and place and relationship. It's not just a strange drink from a strange place, it's a part of the community in which it's made and the people who make it. And I think that the thing is that people, she also said in that piece that people from all around the world who perhaps heard about Scotland and think it's a romantic place but have never been there can associate themselves with the country through the drink Scotch. It's just, I love it.
Absolutely. Couldn't say it absolutely better. My friend Stacy, she's an Irish. There are some SMW Irish, I believe. Good to see you, Stacy, and classmate Tobias. I know you know Tobias.
Hi, guys.
Good to see you. Hey, y'all. I would love to hear you say y'all in real life, Tobias. That would be amazing. Thank you for being on. Donner Pass is on. Rick, awesome. So good to see everybody. So in my glass, to start off with, we were talking about this is my glass that I have. It is a gathering bottle, I think from 2022, and it's the 2 middle fingers of Scotch. This is a Glentalker's at 66.3. Woof.
I've got 46. Glenlossie, 11 years old. First fill bourbon, and this one's 56.3.
So this is a first fill Oloroso, ex Oloroso, but Speyside from 2011. It's a 10-year-old. A Glentalker's. There will never be a distillery Glentalker's on a shelf in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Won't ever happen. But I can experience what Glentalker's is through an SMWS bottling.
And I think that's a great lead in to what we were talking about earlier, Leanne. When you go back to 1983, when this society was started, single malt whiskey wasn't a big thing at all. There is a report in 1981 from Harrods in London, world famous store, and in their report in 1981, in their drinks report, they said less than 1% of the whiskey they had available was single malt. And when Pip didn't like whiskey until he tasted this single cask Glenfarclas when he was visiting a friend in the north of Scotland. And it's from there that he kind of started. Neil was with me. I know Neil's on. Neil was with me on Thursday when we had a little group of us to a Glasgow whisky distillery. Pip was there, and we really enjoyed in the afterwards in the Scotch Malt Whisky Society in Bath Street, the stories that he tells. It doesn't matter how many times he tells them, they're just wonderful. The founder's tale stories, his story about how the whole Scotch Malt Whisky Society came about, and also his life outside whiskey. He's nearly killed himself 3 times and blooming things that he's done and had accidents on, An incredible man. But he will say, and I think it's true, that him leading the whole notion of bottling single cask, single malt Scotch changed the landscape for single malt Scotch as a whole,
Right.
And even some of the distillers now will admit that in some of the things they say. He nearly, at that time, there wasn't even a lot of single malt Scotch. And here's a man going to bottle single cask, single malt Scotch in the middle of a whiskey recession, by the way.
Yeah. When things are closing down left and right.
And he admits he nearly went bankrupt twice. And then the Scotsman newspaper and the Times in London that features on this strange whiskey club from Edinburgh, membership doubled, and now we know where we are, 40 countries around the world, biggest whiskey club in the world, and he's entitled to feel proud, very proud of that.
Absolutely. There is a fine line between crazy and brilliant. Probably he straddled that a few times. I think those that avant-garde kind of thought process, and perhaps willingly turn an eye to away from risk.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just concentrating on the reward.
Yeah.
And you wonder if he never did it, what would have happened?
That's right. No, it's an amazing story, and even now, Leanne, at the age of 83, Neil will be able to tell you, because he was there on Thursday, he's still physically and mentally alert. He's still heavily involved in the local community in Montrose where he lives, trying to influence the council to make right decisions on roads and properties. And all of that. Incredible. And he's actually written, he has a re-release of this book. This is from 2019. He did a re-release last year, which included 2 further chapters about things which he thinks would be interesting to the world of whiskey drinkers around the world, and they're very interesting.
Very interesting. I love this from Peathead. Frank, one of the reasons he's become a member is possibly to try a lot until then unknown distilleries without the color of unnecessary filtration and without the marketing of, that type of influence as well. Right, Frank? I mean, because, it's in the bottle and you don't put the distillery name on those. We've all kind of figured out where to go to find those things out. But all those numbers that Frank had put in his samplings that he was going to have, that first number is the distillery, but before the dot. And the second set of numbers is the number of the cask from that distillery, correct?
And we actually did a tasting a few years ago, Lee, and that's exactly right what you just said. We did a tasting a few years ago in the Vaults in Edinburgh, our home venue, and Pip was doing the tasting, and from the archive, he introduced a bottle to the audience of 1.1.
Wow.
And we all tasted the 1.1 on the night. And I've got a friend who lives in Moscow in Russia. And when he found out that was happening, he got me to buy him a ticket and he flew over just for that tasting. and he flew back the following morning after having tasted one one. So, so it was quite a fantastic experience, you know.
Wow, that's crazy. That is
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
Rachel said she was there.
Yes, she
Oh,
was. She
wow.
was indeed. She was indeed.
Oh, y'all should have bought a lottery ticket. See, Chad's in as well. Hey, friend, good to see you. And Chad's from Canada. Man, we've got a great group on. So this two middle fingers of Scotch, which I absolutely love. The whole idea, it packs a punch. Let's put it that way. It's lovely, straight on at the 66.3%, but with a scooch of water. It is just it just blooms out like mad. And that's another thing I really like about my SMWS bottles is that they are the single cast. They come in the cast strength, and I can play well with my whiskey if I'm so inclined.
I was just, I think, I was just saying, there are a few companies now who actually bottle water specially for adding to Scotch. Scottish water, of course, and the latest one is a firm called, what I don't know if you can get this in America yet.
Mm-mm.
This is called 126 Water for whiskey. The 126 represents the depth in fathoms of Loch Ness where the whiskey comes from. They're allowed to take a little bit of that water out and bottle it for whiskey. Soft water, very low in minerals. And if you can ever get a hold of that in the US, it's worth looking at. Loch Ness has got more water than all of the lakes in England and Wales combined. So they're allowed to take a little bit of it out to get those to put in their whiskey.
That is so amazing. I knew it was a very deep place, but show us again the packaging and the shout out to Loch Ness.
Oh yeah, it's Loch Ness, and what happens here is the 126 is the number of fathoms, and if you cover up the lower half of the 126, you get an image of the monster. That's the idea.
You get Nessie. That's so cool.
Crazy,
That's so cool.
crazy.
Well, I can only imagine. I did see that your pictures on Instagram of you and Neil with Pip, and Rick has a question. He's just like, "How bad did you feel as bad as Neil did after the next day?"
The following day, Rick, I go up in my hotel in Glasgow and went on a little bit of a pub crawl. So I was in about 7 or 8 different pubs around Glasgow, taking photographs.
Little hair of the dog, and you're great.
And tried to posting photographs and asking people if they knew where I was.
Oh, that's awesome. So Rachel, when you were talking about there was a company that had the wee bottles for fiber, or I think I remember Isla water when we were there in 2019. Someone had a little bottle of Isla water, but not that 126.
Are you talking about Usgi Source, Rachel?
Probably so. That's amazing. That's great. Mm. So tell me about what you do. I'm actually going to move on to my second dram. So because I want everybody to see what I'm doing.
Well, basically, what happened to me, Leanne, I've been a member for a long time. I joined. There's a famous story which Rachel knows well. Me visiting Isla in 1983 and getting to taste single cask Lafroig. And of course, it wasn't available to buy then. That just because through a visit to the distillery. But a little bit later, I found out this society had started in Edinburgh, and I joined. And I'm number 986. So I was in the first 1,000 of the members.
Wow.
In 2007, in the newsletter, they were asking some members to put their names forward to be ambassadors because they wanted to extend the number of members' tastings. So I did, and I was chosen. But I still had a full-time job. I was only doing it as a little bit of kind of hobby stuff. When I stopped doing the hobby stuff, I still took the real job. I mean, a
Yeah.
few years later, Scotch Malt Whisky Society asked me to go to Denmark to help open the branch there, and it kind of started from there. So in the last 6 or 7 years, I've been in many, many, many countries all around the world, just doing events, media interviews, and that sort of thing. And I can just never regard it as work. It does not feel like work to me, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody had said to me way back then, can you think of a dream you'd like to live? And somebody has presented me with that dream, you know. And I've met so many people across the world as well. And obviously, as we talked about before, that whiskey's brought us together, the love of Scotland and Scotch. And now when these people come over from abroad, I meet them, I do tastings for them in Glasgow. Sometimes I did one for a South African group a few weeks ago, and I got a big Chinese group a few weeks before that, who'd all came and asked me if I would come and do tastings for them. So it's wonderful. I love it.
Well, I've done 2 of your tastings. One at the Academy we had on that Wednesday night with one of the best dinners I've ever had. And then at the Victoria Whiskey Festival, sat through one of your tastings there as well. And it's what I call dinner and a show, folks. You may not eat. You're going to have some lovely, lovely drams, and you're going to learn about them. But to experience the production that you put in the heart and the soul that you do in truly transferring the passion from you to the sampler of what that whiskey is and what it does, and your stories are fabulous. I mean, I can never get enough of your stories.
I can tell you, yeah. I remember once I was asked to do a tasting in London on the 2nd of May, and I said to them, sorry, but I'm going home to Glasgow to see my mother that week. I said, okay. A couple of weeks later, they asked me, someone else asked me, I said, no, look, I'm going home to see Mum. What is this tasting anyway? So it's the G20 summit at Whitehall.
What?
I said, my mother can wait a week. So it's it was either going to be Downing Street or the Scottish office. They couldn't tell me until the last minute. So it was the Scottish office. And the Secretary of State for Scotland at the time, Jim Murphy, stood up in a little dais in front of all of the people and said how he hoped they would talk about troubling issues and the world would be a better place and all that kind of thing. And then he introduced me to talk about whiskey and do a tasting. So I stood up on a dais and I said, you know, ladies and gentlemen, I've done many, many of these tastings before, but never before have I had the Secretary of State for Scotland as my warm-up act. The whole pit, and I turned around and looked at Jim Murphy, and he was killing himself laughing. You know,
That's amazing.
It's just the fun that you get out of it. You know,
that's awesome. Well, I want to say a big thanks and a shout out to Hamish. He knows Kenny and Craig from 126 Water. And thanks so much for the super chat. They're great guys and a great product with that soft water. That's amazing. Thank you, Hamish. This is so sweet. That's enough for me. I'm gonna vomit some of that water for sure.
Well, I'll tell you something else, Liam. We were talking earlier. You talked about the move from blends to single malt, and we have to remember that the people who are on this broadcast tonight are still a very small part of the whiskey drinking population around the world.
Right.
Single malt is still only 15 or 16% of the total, although it's higher than that value, obviously. But when I was a young man, at Hogmanay in Scotland, which is a big celebration of the family, that was all blended whiskey that my father and all my uncles brought to the piece to share with other guys. I hardly ever saw a single malt. And that's, I think, where the idea of pips exploded the whole thing onto the market. And also back then, at my family gatherings at Hogmanay, it was only the men who drank whiskey. And the thing is, when the men drank it in the pubs, Leanne, and the reason why the women probably didn't drink it was it wasn't that good. There was always water or lemonade on the bar. And what they do is they got what they called a half and a half. So a half of whiskey was a little glass of whiskey, and a half of beer. And my uncle Jim and my father would get the whiskey, put lemonade or water in it, sling it back, sip the beer, and then get another whiskey. You know, and it wasn't drunk.
It wasn't about
flavor enjoyment. You know, it was completely other reason they were drinking it. You know,
they were getting the drink on, as we say down here.
Yes.
That very big point. Very big point. And Chad, 100%, because I know Chad was at that tasting too with me up in Victoria. Definitely the type and personality that people gravitate to. I mean, you are Velcro.
Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Chad.
You know, love to be. Absolutely could spend hours listening to his stories and all the knowledge that you have in your pinky. Most of us have always already forgotten. I'm telling you. And I see Sugar Kitty is in. Hello, friend. Great to see you in here as well. Goodness. Well, I've moved on to this Glen Scotia Mighty and Mineralic. This is one of the bottles I got last summer. One of the, I don't know if I ever told you, one of the 17 I brought back. And 80 samples.
That must have been a heavy case, Leanne.
Two cases. And let's just say I got through customs real fast. I was like, and where have you been? I was like, I was in Scotland for 3 weeks. What were you doing? Driving all over Scotland. Well, did you buy anything? Yeah, some shortbread cookies and some whiskey. Okay, have a good night. Whoa, get the bags out of here. Let's go. But this one, having the experience as a member, and I've been a member for quite a few years, but having the experience of being able to take my card. So I've been to Leith, to the vaults. I've got to do that. I've been to Queen Street in Edinburgh, and I've been to Bath Street in Glasgow. Haven't made the one in London yet. But there is something about those of us who don't have that in our backyard to say, I got my card. Here's my card. You know, you're under 1,000 in your number. I'm like 26,000 something. Sure, you know. Yeah. But just being able to walk in there and just have absorbed those tasting rooms. And I was there in Leith before they started the remodeling. Yes. I'm very anxious to go back to see how they reworked all that, because I know in my head like how they moved everything. And to me, that makes perfect sense. When you walk in the door, it should be all there now, you know. But being able to have access to these types of bottlings, again, you know, I have quite a few Glen Scotias. I only have like 1 or 2 that are cask strength because I picked those up there.
Sure.
You know, they're not, there's other than a Victoriana. I mean, it's a batch strength, so it's not even a single cask, right? So, you know, but one of my faves, because Glen Scotia is one of my faves. Ian McAllister is one of my faves.
Yeah, you lovely man, isn't he? Lovely man.
I just sit there and listen and him talk all day too. But the first one, the 2 middle fingers of Scotch, Mighty and Mineralic. My third dram is a finesse of fragrant furnace. Can we talk about the names and the write-ups?
I tell you,
SMWS.
I'll tell you something, Leanne. There's actually been a recent article, and it's in the latest August outturn. One of the panel chairmen has written specifically about the difference between trying to taste the whiskey for the good points and maybe some of the off points, and then describing it as we do in the tasting note. Because it's quite a different thing that if you're trying to taste the whiskey on behalf of the members to see what's good enough to be bottled, and you let your emotions run wild with you about sitting on a Argyle hillside with a fire burning below and all that, then perhaps you'll lose something which is important in terms of so it's almost that the tasting panel is almost a bit like almost a lab coat affair, you know. And then and one of the things that used to happen was that in the tasting panel, some people are quite slow to identify the flavors, and some people are quite quick. So somebody who's quick said, "Oh, bitter lemon," and three other people say, "Oh, yes, that's what it is," So everybody has to stay quiet for 2 minutes, write down what they're getting, so they can then give that expression to the chairman of the panel. And the idea is that you're trying to ascertain all of the flavors, and if there are some off notes, if there's something not quite right, then that should come out too. And the panel might then decide, if that's a strong feeling, that it's not ready to be bottled, and we need to do something else with that. But the chairman on the day has to take away all of these notes and then turn it into an entertaining note, reflecting those flavours, so that it's a nice, enjoyable, amusing thing to read, and also give it a title,
Yeah.
So all of these titles and all of those extravagant tasting notes will be a product of the tasting panel, but the imagination of the chairman then in trying to write that in such a way that it will convey the flavours, but give the members a little bit of fun in reading it too. There have been some crazy ones, I can tell you.
Yes.
There have been some crazy ones, And often I have tried to guess who the chairman is from the name of the whiskey, because I know the chairman and how they tend to think, and sometimes I've got them wrong, So but it's a very deep. And what I'll tell you a wee story that Pip told us the other day there, and this is a true story. When Pip formed his first tasting panel, one of the people he had on it, and Neil will remember him telling the story, was a man called Hamish Henderson. Hamish Henderson was a writer of songs and books, and very expressive person, and he also loved whiskey. And Pip thought he'll be fantastic for the tasting panel. So on that first tasting panel, Pip was going round the people, and he got to Hamish, and Hamish, what do you think then? Hamish said, "Oh, that's just a wonderful whiskey, Pip." But he gives a bit more than that. Flavour wise. "Oh, it's just such a lovely, lovely whiskey, Pip." And that's all he could get out of him. that was his first and last appearance on the tasting panel. And I was on the tasting panel a few years ago, and I had this whiskey, and Ewan Campbell, our spirits manager, was the chairman that day. And I said to him, "Oh, Ewan, I'm getting leather from an old car." And he said, "That's very good, John, very good. Can you tell me what's the model of the car?" Now, that's not as daft as it sounds, Leanne, because what you have to remember is that your olfactory system resides in your brain within your limbic system, which also holds your emotions and memories, which is why some of us remember things from our personal past when we're tasting a whiskey. And he was thinking, if I can get more detail on that out of him, it might make for a more interesting tasting note. And what I was thinking about at the time was my brother-in-law's 1953 Rolls Royce.
Wow.
So that makes for interesting tasting note, isn't it? But that's the thing. You cannot be wrong about the tasting note, because it might mean something to you and to you only,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I got to go over in March to Waco, Texas. Met some of my buddies over there. We all converged and was able to do the tasting panel with Charlie McCheyne. And lo and behold, you heard it here. The tasting panel experience number 44-184. So this is one of them that we tasted. This is the Galaxy. So all of us this week went back to our notes that we took and kind of like looked back at what they're saying. This mist, MISTS, mist and mellow fruitfulness. And all of us were saying it was malty and fruity, like melons and pineapple and just different types of kind of tropical. And it was funny how, like, comparing all of that, and now knowing that that's one of the ones that we tasted, and now it's a bottling for US. Pretty cool.
It's just the wonder of single cask Scotch, and that, you know, because of the difference in every single cask. If you drink Glenmorangie every day, then the same expression of Glenmorangie, then you know what you like, but it's going to be the same thing every day, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the whole journey is about experiencing new flavors.
It's goodness. So Chad says that last year he celebrated his 10th year as a member for SMWS Canada. And he even got a really nice letter. And we know we love Kelly and Rob.
Yes.
They're just amazing. And a mini bottle of 29.83 Kissing a Barlog's Bum.
Chad, that's amazing.
20-year-old Lefroy.
I know the SMWS Canada people very well.
Yes.
Kelly and Rob.
They're amazing.
You know them as well, Leanne, because they're also involved in Holyrood Distillery in Edinburgh.
Right.
And they're a great couple. And the Victoria Whisky Festival, I think, Leanne, is one of the best whisky festivals in the world.
It is. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm trying to figure out how to get back this year.
I was actually there, and I was coming out of my hotel room thinking, I'll go and see if I can find Leanne somewhere. Guess who's walking past my hotel room door as I walked out?
Me and Jennifer. Boom. I know Jennifer had a conflict. She'll no doubt will listen to this on replay when she's working on her sewing for sure.
I'll say Jen was there as well, wasn't she? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I corrupt her into all kinds of things, John. I'm sure that's hard for you to understand or even conceive. Bill's got a 70.46, plenty of razzmatazz. What a great name. Oh, wow.
I must tell you all the story about a bottling of several years ago. And some of you, I may have told some of you this story, but the name of the bottle was Skunk Roadkill and Whiskey Flavoured Condoms. And our spirits director said, how in the name are we going to be able to sell that one? And it flew off the shelves.
Now, if it flew off the shelf, that's great. Did they actually crack it open? Because I don't know that either one of those things are something I would ever aspire for. This what I love about this Glen Scotia, because I got to taste it at Bath Street in Glasgow, and it Mighty and Mineralic could not be more accurate for this dram. It is a bit granite, you know. It's as if there was liquid rocks in it. Not salt, not marine, or there's not a terrible amount of salinity to it. But what I wanted to read is a classic example of a top-notch, evocative, modern-day Campbelltown single malt full of linens, chalk, that mineralic, coastal breeze, and a brittle mineral vibes. And that's totally it. It's got maybe a bit of char, not really smoke, certainly no real peat on it. But it's clean and crisp and granite.
We're talking, Leanne, about. I'm talking to someone at the moment who I know who works for SMWS, and he just passed a degree in film production, and he would like to try and do a film about regionality of Scotch. What it all was supposed to mean in bygone years, whether it's still true to an extent today, and also which distilleries can be used, which show that actually it doesn't matter where your distillery is, you can actually make an editable whiskey. So I've connected him with a production firm and maybe get that going. But it's true, isn't it? You still read sometimes the lowlands are for this and the highlands are for that and Speyside for that, and and it's just so different, because the talent of these whiskey makers at Scotch distilleries these days, I mean, they can do so many different things. And the owners of Glen Scotia and Loch Lomond Group do precisely that at Loch Lomond themselves.
Right.
Incredible variety of new make spirit before it even gets into the cask.
Crazy. So Donna's wanting to know if SMWS has to get any kind of approval of the names for any trademark authority.
Donna, that's a blooming good question, because that's almost the reason why the numbers are there in the first place.
Okay.
When we started back in 83, Glenfarclas said to Glenfarclas were number one. He said, wait a minute. If you put Glenfarclas on the bottle, it will confuse Glenfarclas drinkers because it won't taste like ours because yours is single cask. So is there any other way we could do that and we came up with a numbering system? But there was also a handiness about it in that if we use a numbering system, no one could accuse us of using their brand, and that's the route we went down.
Right.
Funnily enough, in all of our early newsletters, way back then, Pip told members freely what the numbers meant. They were about to bottle a new distillery called this and all that kind of thing. So, and of course, things have moved on a bit since then because the numbering system itself has become so iconic in the world of whiskey that we want to try and hold on to it. But Donna, yes, that was a big part of it in the early days. Certainly was.
That's so interesting. So very interesting. Oh, goodness.
In fact, I'll tell you this. We used to give our members clues geographically and stylistically about what this whiskey might be, right?
Yeah.
For those who hadn't read the newsletter, which already told them. And then the internet came along. And of course, you can just look it up now. So
yeah. Google is your friend. Like you can put the entire number, the first two numbers dot second set of numbers, and instantaneously it'll go to some review or perhaps even the entry for old SMWS for that particular bottle.
Also, yeah, I think it's interesting that because some distilleries now are so complex, probably Loch Lomond, who I've just mentioned, is a good example. They've got 3 different numbers on the single malt scale and 2 on the grain scale, because they make so many different types of whiskey, and that we try to give each one a number so the members will know which one to expect, if you know what I mean.
Good point. So, and I think too, so that's a good segue because you mentioned the grain. You do have other bottlings. You have rum, you have American single malts that are coming out. You have bourbons, you've had gin, you have world whiskey.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you a wee story about the grain, Leanne. Single grain is now a thing, isn't it? 35, 40 years ago, single grain wasn't a thing. Single malt was not a thing, I mean single grain. And in the newsletter one year, a member asked Pitt by letter why we didn't bottle single grain. And Pip said, "Thank you, Mr. McCallum from Stirling, for your question as to why we don't bottle single grain. The reason that we don't bottle single grain is exactly the same reason why we don't bottle bleach." Now, how things have changed. And when you tell Pip that story these days, he holds his head in his hands and think, how is he to know really that it's going to become such a big thing? But yeah, we did. So first of all, we started doing grain, Leanne, and then we did other spirits.
Yeah.
We've done some gin, we've done some Armagnac and cognac, although we're not doing so much of these two anymore. We've done other countries' whiskey too.
Mm-hmm.
So we've done whiskey from America, of course, from Australia now, from Denmark, from France.
You did the one we had in Victoria.
Sweden.
Yeah.
I always say to people that it's the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. And when we first bottled a foreign whiskey, that was the Irish, that was kind of accepted. And then we bottled a Japanese whiskey. And when the Scotch Malt Whisky Society members. There was a rioting on the streets of Edinburgh.
Oh, Lord. There
Bonfires of
were the children.
membership cards outside the venues. I'm only joking. There's only 3 complaints. But then, if you think that was bad, can you imagine the reaction when we bottled our first English whiskey? My goodness.
That's treason.
But the fact is, you can get whiskies from around the world now.
Yes.
And you can do a comparison if you like, you know. So
well, and I really am enjoying a lot of the American single malts, and there's a particular one, Andalusia in Texas, that I like. I mean, I like Balcones as well, but Andalusia I really enjoy. And as I try to tell people who aren't familiar with really even Scotch, they're mostly bourbon drinkers and are like, what's American single malt? I said, it's similar, but it's not Scotch, and it's not meant to be Scotch. They're not trying to say, hey, how can we make Scotch today? They're trying to make what they want to make. It's just with single malt, You
have to remember, Leanne, that when Misataka Taketsuru from Japan came to Scotland after the First World War to learn about distilling, and then he went back and they started making whiskey in Japan, they were effectively trying to copy Scotch. And some of the whiskey makers in Japan now still say that we can never be Scotch, but that's what we try to do,
Mm-hmm.
So there's a difference in feeling about that in different parts of the world,
Yeah. Hey, Roy is in. Hello, good to see you. Thanks for being here as well. And
is that Mr. Duff?
Yeah. Sending Rick's getting back to work. Great time, Leanne, and thanks, John, for sharing all the knowledge and stories. Oh goodness, that's awesome. Yes, American single malt. Another one. Peter knows. He's out that way, out west, Delbach.
I actually was at Delbach.
When y'all this last trip?
During my last trip, yes, yes.
Yeah, awesome. Daniel, I got to get you some of that Andalusia. I think you'd lose your mind. Really, really good stuff. Goodness gracious.
I've now switched to a number 4.
I know you like number 4 because when we were there for the Isle of Whiskey Academy, you were a giddy child. And you'd been there a million times, but you still like your Lefroy.
Absolutely.
So I have a bottle. So very quickly, 2 summers ago, 4th of July weekend, you and your absolutely lovely wife, Nicola, who I have to say you married up, bud.
The thing is, Leanne, Nicola's English, which can't help it. It's just where she was born, But
she can't help it, but she picked you and you picked her, so you got to own up it. But y'all were making your way through the deep South, and you actually were here in Baton Rouge, and we got to get you to come and see us, and
fantastic evening, fantastic.
It was great. Mark cooked steaks, and we had a great visit. It was wonderful. And then you scamp. A couple weeks after this box, we all know, those of us in SMWS know the shape of that box, showed up. And this is what was there in this absolutely stunner of a rare release. It's the Whiskey Festival 2023 release, 18-year memoir of a finesse and a fragrant furnace. So I finally can drink this in your presence in my Isle of Whiskey Academy glass, coming full circle. I have shared this. I think I told you with at least 10 people. I think I took this to the SMWS tasting panel that in March when I got all the buddies together and we were doing that. And after the tasting, we went out to the hotel patio. Everybody pulled their bottles up, and I said, "This one we must taste together because he's not here." But yes, and then I took it back to Texas when the Scotch for Dummies were all bottling their American single malt at Andalusia, and we were all staying in houses in nearby. And one of the dummies, Andrew, is a huge peat fiend, and he, I won't forget his face when he had some of this. He was in absolute bliss, and he was just like, "This is what a Bamor should taste like."
Good,
You
good.
know?
Well, you know our good friend Rachel, who's on,
Yes,
lives about 3 minutes walk away from that distillery.
she literally when we were sitting there, that's for sure. Oh my goodness. Oh, good point. That's great to know, Sugar Kitty. In 40 minutes, Whiskey Crusaders, it's another channel in Texas, North Texas, is going to have a live stream with Delbach.
Oh,
Well,
okay. Good
sweet.
stuff.
I'll jump on that here pretty close and
Okay.
soon. Peter, wishing you all the well and all the good luck on that, friend. I'll be thinking about you for sure. Brian Whiskey Kilco is in. Hello, my friend. Good to see you. I know Stacy's got her show this afternoon. Yep. Two Rachel goes, yeah, just steps away. Handy, too handy. So speaking of steps away from a more, when we're chatting ahead of time, you said you had a story about Mr. Jim McEwen, and I know he literally grew up steps away from Bamor.
Yeah, Rachel will remember this story. I was at the Isle of Whiskey Academy. Jim was in doing a talk one evening. And I said to Jim, you know the Bowmore from 1960s that people are paying thousands and thousands of pounds for? You were there making it. What makes it so good? He said, you mean, John, when we used to get a couple of tots a day as a staff benefit, when we used to bring in any old container we could find, and when no one was looking, we used to slug stuff out of the mash tun. When we sometimes went into the still room, and the still man was so drunk he had fell asleep and missed the cut. When we used to load it into any old wood we could get a hold of, because most of it was going to blends, and in any case, we didn't know so much about the reaction of the spirit with the wood back then. Or today, John, no drinking on site. Everything is precise. And we know so much more about how the spirit reacts with different types of wood, for how long, and all that kind of thing. Would you like to ask me the question again, John? I said, but Jim, they're paying thousands and thousands of pounds for that. He said,
yeah.
He said, we have never made better spirit than we're making in Scotland today.
Yes, I totally agree. I can totally see that.
Well, let me tell you something else, Leanne. You know that all of the new distilleries, they try to focus on the old heritage barleys, because the argument is, although we've increased yield by 50% in the 20th century by using different new strains of barleys, we've lost the flavour. So they're going back to heritage barleys because they can create the flavour from the barley. Now, there's another view about barley's contribution to flavour. Have you heard it before? No? This is the view from a man called Nick Morgan, who was a big wheel in Diageo, and has now written several whiskey books. He said, so the barley contributes flavour, does it? After it's been thrashed, hoaxed, ground down, boiled again, consumed and then disgorged by yeast, and then boiled again and again, before being locked, spirit broken, in the solitary confinement of an overpowering cask. That's the other view.
Yeah. Everybody's got a perspective.
So,
but I mean,
so
a lot is done to that grain, right?
The great thing, Leanne, and for everybody else who's on here, is that the wonderful thing about Scotch whisky is that there are so many views which contradict other views.
Yeah.
There's no black and white. The day that science can tell you exactly what's going to happen and what flavors are going to emerge from this part of the process, then the romance will be gone. At the moment, every single individual, can make up their own mind.
I love the magic about that. I mean, it goes to what your palate actually is, how it's responding to the liquid. It's what you mentioned earlier, your whole database of smell and taste memory banks with olfactory, just like being able to recall your grandmother's, not just apple pie, but your grandmother's apple pie after Sunday church, and it was hot and humid that day. That is like that flash of a memory.
And Leanne, as Rachel well knows, my story about Laphroaig and why it's the distillery of my heart goes back to a visit on Islay at that distillery at a certain moment in time, which I can never ever forget. And as Rachel will tell you in quoting the Dram and the Whiskey Academy, the context, the people, the place will override anything that anybody ever tells me bad about Laphroaig. I just love Laphroaig.
Yeah, great. Scott Allen's in. Greetings from Arizona. Great to see. We got folks still popping in. I see Kenny Stewart is in. Sanjavad to you. And this is Kenny from 126
Kenny, hi Kenny.
Were your ears burning, friend? Because we were talking about you and hey, Mister's shouting out. I'm sure he probably sent you a ping saying, hey.
I've told them all about the water, Kenny.
It's great. I'm excited about it. You didn't know you were going to be on a show of someone in Louisiana that talks about Scotch today, did you? I'm glad you're here. Whiskey and Wine Trails is here. I know Tom had to pop in and out. That's great. Yes. When I was talking about the Bamor, it was definitely Mr. Scotch for Dummies.
There you go, Kenny.
House. Yep. Oh, right in the middle. There you go. Great project. Love the packaging, Kenny. That's amazing. Yeah, as we all know, John is a good man. Absolutely. Absolutely. This Bamor really opened up as the bottle opened up. And I think that's another really cool thing about any bottle. This one comes in at 56.9, and it's got a bright fruit taste to it, and then it's just this charcoal smoke with a little bit of earthy peat. The peat to me is not too dank and dirt, it's more of a charcoal, not even campfire, just kind of a charcoal finish to it. And it's interesting. I was talking to one of my friends I work with last night, and I had a peated whiskey for him to try, because most of them, it's not their thing, and that's okay. I didn't want to alienate them right off the bat. And to me, I think, especially of those of us who live in the deep South, we barbecue everything, right? We throw that sucker away. It's a chicken. We barbecue fish. We barbecue, every sort of meat product there is, we could put on a barbecue. And we're used to that type of flavoring, to the point where we even have an additive for food called liquid smoke. So I don't know if y'all have something like that over there, but if you need to fake it as a barbecue, you could throw a little, even in cocktails, you could throw a little liquid smoke in it to kind of give it the smoky flavor. So for me, it was a no-brainer when I literally went from one day to Oban to Laphroaig the next day, and I'm like, whoa, this is different. But I loved it because there was I found like this home or this synergy with all the smoke, because that's what we do down here in the South.
Yeah.
And Donna says, liquid smoke is in my cupboard. See, these things. This is the way we do things here. Ah,
I think also, Leanne, I mean, you're talking about the flavours there. And if you have any single casting of malt whiskey will have a base kind of flavour. But you can have it on a Tuesday evening and again on a Thursday evening and get different things from it, can't you?
totally different things.
You know.
This bottle, this Boomer it was very tight at first, which most bottles, neck pour, you kind of want it to give it a little air, right? And this is just bloomed out so well. And I caught myself, because I kind of go back and rewatch these things. I'm like, I use the term bloom too much. And I don't really think I do now, because to me, bloom means to develop and blow. You know what I'm thinking about, like time lapse of a flower opening up. That in my head is what these bottles do as they open up and get a little oxygen and chemicals change around a little bit, throw a little water on it, that kind of thing. I don't know, very graphical in my head. So that just made sense to me.
Let me say, the other evening there, Lee, I remember we were talking to Pip. For those who've just joined us, the Pip, the founder of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, who me and Neil, who's also on the broadcast, happened to be with on Thursday. And he was saying that it's almost impossible to tell which distillery a whiskey comes from blind. And he's very sceptical of the people who say they can do that. Now, here's a wee story for you. And I told Pip, and he was quite impressed actually the other day there. There was a chap called Willie Phillips, who used to be chairman of the society. Before he was chairman of the society, he'd been chairman of Macallan.
Oh,
okay. He was a mature man. He's in mature years. As a teenager, the Boy Scouts group that he was a member of had gone camping for the weekend near Glenlossie Distillery. And all weekend long, they were getting an aroma from this distillery. Willie swore that it had such an impact on him at that very early age, they could always tell a Glenlossie blind. Huh. I seen him tested on it 3 times with 4 or 5 glasses in front of him. Okay, Willie, which one is the Glenlossie? That one. And he was right every time.
Wow.
Which just goes to prove the power of that limbic system thing we were talking about earlier,
Yes.
And it also goes to prove that you can never have a black and white version of any story related to whiskey about flavour.
Yeah, totally get it. I just had to laugh at Daniel's comment that he has an open gallon of liquid smoke, not for breakfast anymore. I can't even imagine what you would do with a gallon of liquid smoke, my friend. So Donna says she was pretty lucky having a tasting at the Isla House, not knowing the numbering system at the time when you guessed Lafroig for a 29 bottling. Interesting.
Well done, Donna. You should have 10 years free passage on the ferry for that.
No joke. Hopefully it'll run, on time. That's awesome. I know I've been able to pick Glen Scotias out. I don't know if it's just I have like emotional attachment to it or something. But SMWS America did a kind of a malt madness thing where YouTubers got paired up, and Scott Bruneau put us all like in a tournament type bracket. And I was first up against my buddies, the Scotch for Dummies, and I won. And then I went up against Jason, the Mash and Drum, who is a bourbon guy but has a hell of a palate on Scotch. And he and I both nailed this one particular one as Glen Scotia. I mean, we nailed it. It was just like, that's it. That we know it. We know it.
Fantastic.
And so I will ride that glory for as long as I can. I absolutely will. I will. But so what have you got going on coming up? I mean, so you have some time for some R&R. Y'all were here this
Well,
spring
what happened? What happened in the last 12 months, Leanne, was that I became president of the Robert Burns Club of London.
That's right. Among your many
Uh,
accolades, including Keeper of the Grape.
yeah, and I was involved with the Robert Burns World Federation. So I actually asked Scotch Malt Whisky Society, look, if they could kind of hold off for 12 months because I had to be in London to try and arrange all this stuff and be around at different events. And I'd almost before you're president, you're vice president for a year, and I'd almost missed that year because I was away so much. So I kind of didn't do so much in the last 12 months. And as I say, most of the stuff I've done is for foreign people coming to visit us in Scotland, So we'll wait till after the summer and see how things kind of pick up again. I've got some things on the go for the next few months, but not quite as hectic as it was before because it's well to build back up again,
Yep. Yeah. Do you get real busy at the end of the year?
Yeah. I mean, if you take an example, the 22-23 year, I mean, I was 14 or 15 countries across 4 continents, and it was pretty constant, and that's not anywhere near as much as some regular malt whiskey ambassadors do. I mean, they're just all over the place,
But I still would like to get your miles.
Yeah. Oh, but as I say, I never ever could consider it as work. I always just enjoyed it so much,
Well, they couldn't find a better person in my book to
everything. I just always felt, Leanne, that I was representing Scotland and Scottish, or Scotch and Scotland, whichever way you want to put it. And I just love doing that, because what I've found across the world, including the States, is that people have got a fondness for this wee country called Scotland, who they've heard about, and they think it's all. I mean, Scotland has given so much to the world, but when you ask people around the world what they think about, it's bagpipes and whiskey.
Yes. But when they find out that most every engineering feat came out of Scotland, it's amazing to see what all has come out of that country.
Well, I'll tell you something. The ancestors that you have in your country are very kind in their comments about my wee country here.
We're all big fans. We're all big fans. For those of us, especially that can trace our lineage back to that place and have a little bit of that romance and the swoon of, what it was like to be from there. Because when it comes down to it,
what I think is a very, very ironic thing at the moment is that one of your presidential candidates says his family is from Harris, the island in Scotland, and his opponent is called Harris. So, and sometimes we joke here that I'll better not say it.
Well, let's just say, my birthday is on election day.
Oh, really?
And Jennifer and I have already determined we're doing a show, and we're drinking Springbank because that's about the best as it can be on that day. That's all we're gonna say about that day. But yeah, I think everybody that part of it, when it comes down to it, and politics aside, we're all here in the States because we all came from somewhere. And part of my family was here to begin with. So all of that, we all had to come from somewhere.
I'll tell you something. Just to interrupt you, I found that one of the most fascinating things of my journeys in the American South. The conglomeration of different nationalities over a couple of 100 years.
Yeah,
it's quite incredible.
I mean, we talked about that even that night, how we're a relatively young country, but we are quite tumultuous at times because we want to be a leader like that. Anyway, but it's the idea. I mean, you look at New Orleans, you can't get more melting pot than what New Orleans was, and still to this day to an extent, but back in the day, it brought because it was a shipping port. So it brought people from every corner of the world. And all of that influence is in the architecture, it's in the food to this day, it's in the joie de vivre of the joy of
Yes.
life, and the care not about anything. We're just going to do what you do. All of those things. So, it's that helps with the past, helps with our present identity. And it's interesting to see, like, my folks came from the Carolinas, and that's where it was huge Scotch Irish and immigration into those
Yeah.
areas way back. We've been able to find my dad's my maiden name all the way back to a place outside of Glasgow in the 1700s. So it's interesting to see, like, where that is. I would love to one day do the genealogy of it,
Yeah,
but
fantastic.
in more ways than one, I have a connection. And it's either through the whiskey or my friends that are there or the experiences I have there. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Well, maybe as most people who know me know, I refuse to ever have a DNA test
Oh, really?
in case I discovered 1% of me was English.
Dude, if ever there was, I don't think Tobias is on still, but if ever there was, you could take the boy out of Glasgow, but you can't take Glasgow out the boy. Okay, because there ain't no way. I just remember, for those who have not gone through Isla Whiskey Academy, one of the best thing. I mean, it's such a fulfilling day, but after dinner and you're back in the room with friends and you're opening up drams and sharing. And we had my dear friend Jason was, bless his heart, as we say in the South, I love you. But he was talking up his bottles, and he was just, I wanted to tell a story on you because I had to. We're kind of sitting there, and he's real chill, and he's just like talking about all these bottles that he's got. And all of us are just like, oh, look, oh, isn't he sweet? He's talking about his little bottle. It's just, we weren't saying anything. And then you get up, and John, you talk with your entire body. That's what I love when I tell people about John. I said, John talks with his entire body. And hey, Graham's on. It's good to see you. And he says, Jason, we don't give a right shite about your bottles. Nobody here gives a right shite about your bottles. We all just kind of lost it. And Jason's like, well, that's cool, man. It's all good. It's like, it was a moment where it was 1 a.m. probably. We'd had incredible whiskey, and it was just one of those things like, bud, we're all here. You don't have to impress us. And I don't really think he was even trying. He was just kind of excited about what he had, and it's like, I will always remember that. And just to say, in that moment, we were all there having good whiskey and the camaraderie and the, you know, good natured fun
Sure,
joking
sure.
with each other and all of that. So, but that is a core memory. If I'm get very, very old one day, it's still living in my brain is not gone, I will always remember that. It was absolutely amazing. Good to see you. Oh goodness. So Graham is literally on the train after coming home from a couple of tastings in Edinburgh today. We should all live the whiskey life of Graham Fraser. I'm gonna tell you, he's absolutely amazing. Where's Roy's been in? Hey friend, sorry I missed you there on there. Great to have lots of new people, and I know this is kind of a weird time for those in the States, but I love seeing all these folks from over in Europe. Manfred getting past his bedtime. Got to go to work early. Thank you, friend, for being in. Yeah, this has been fun. This has been so much fun. Are you going to come back and see me next summer?
Oh, I'd love to.
Because I know your wife likes Louisiana.
Oh, she loves it. She loves it.
And y'all, can y'all imagine me getting this guy and his wife in a boat in the swamp? I'm just saying, I think we need to make it happen. So, preferably in the spring when we're not sweating buckets, because it's hotter than hell here right now.
Are the crocodiles scared of Glaswegians?
They're not scared of anything, sweetheart. they're not scared of a thing. They would just probably go, he's a little different spice. He's like, and then the gator go, oh, he's a little peaty. Like that one. Oh man, I think we're not quite off the rails, but we're there. John, thanks we've gone over. I appreciate your time. I'm gonna
it's been Leanne, it's been wonderful. I mean,
such good people.
Whenever I'm in you and Mark's company, we always have such a bloody great time.
Well, and I was telling someone the other day, they were like, "Oh, I'd like to go to New Orleans." They went to New Orleans for Tales of the Cocktail, and they're like, all they saw was the quarter and everything. I said, when our friends John and Nicola were over, we got to take them to a family restaurant, a family Italian restaurant, and that's the part that I love to share with people is beyond what you see in New Orleans in the quarter and stuff like that. It's the camp.
I mean, you were able to tell us about how Katrina.
Yeah.
That I mean that restaurant was almost under blooming water.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. So the place that we went to is called
how New Orleans recovered from that.
Yes.
Amazing.
Tenacity to the nth degree. Yeah, I mean, it really is. Resilience. I mean, there's all kinds of words, craziness. I mean, there's all kinds of words you can apply to it. But as I told John and Nicola, we were sitting there at the table and I said, okay, you're sitting here at this table, picture water over your head, 2 feet. That's what that was during Katrina, which next month is going to be 19 years ago. The hospital across the street, right? Completely abandoned since that day, and so there's still so much of the city that people don't see, but we just keep doing, we just keep going and keep doing. That's all we got to do.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh goodness. Spirits of the world are in. Lovely evening, Robin and Maria from Sweden. Hello. It's very late. Thank you for being here. And California Scotty, good to see you. Bayou St. John, absolutely. That's right there. Peter, there's one by the racetrack, and then there's one by Bayou St. John. And so that's John when we went through Bayou St. John, and it was when Nicholas said, "Oh, we're going to take a walking tour," and I'm like, "Jazz Fest is starting. No, you don't want to."
Oh yeah.
And then we went straight out, Peter, when we took them to lakefront. Out to Lake Pontchartrain, so they could see the 26-mile lake, 23-mile lake. So yeah. Well, John, thank you so much for being part of this summer series and
loved that.
And tolerating my crazy southernness and just I really do appreciate your time and wherewithal to be on here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, Rachel will tell you. The whole reason I said, I will tell everybody about Scotland. I will tell everybody about Scotch. And she said, Leanne, you did it. I'm like, and I keep doing it, But yeah, just thank you so much for all of this. Great to see you too, Rachel. And all that you do. Thanks for, your service to Scotland, Glasgow, and whiskey in that order. You have to promise to give you a big hug to Nicola for us, for sure.
Will do.
I really do appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Leanne.
Thanks. I'm going to pop you in the back.
Thanks to all who've tuned in. Great to hear from you all.
Awesome. I'll pop you in the back, and I'll be there in a minute after I say bye. Thanks, John. Oh, y'all, this was amazing. This is so cool. Just kind of looking at some of the comments, because this has been a whole lot of fun. Yeah, so Graham was doing all kinds of fun tipsy midgey and a sherry. Deanston Sherry Flight. Oh, wow. Robin Maria, I didn't know. Isla Whiskey Academy. Great to see you. I didn't realize you were in that part of it as well. But yeah, so thanks guys. Appreciate you, Pete Head, for being there and staying up tonight to see this, and everybody who got to join us in. So plans for the fall in terms only, not in temperature in South Louisiana, because it's so hot, y'all. It's so very hot. We will be starting the shows back up in September. And we are going to a modified schedule. So we'll be doing first and third Tuesdays. So block that down on your calendars, and I'll have more about that. But September 3rd is our next show on Tuesday nights, 8 p.m. Central Time. And it'll be a recap of what we've done this summer. This project back here that took me a good month to do. And all kinds of other fun stuff. And I've got September 17th, some really cool guests on. I'm excited to share more about that later. Other big surprises that are coming up in news on September 3rd, that Tuesday. Thank you all so much for coming in. I appreciate all of it. Yes, time for a nap. I'm going to have a nap too, I think, Peter. Great to see you. Watch when you can, Graham. You had a lot of fun at the Tootsie Midgie. I'm not gonna fault you for that, friend. Thanks for trying to watch us on the train. Chad, Sugar Kitty, all of you folks. Yep. Check Whiskey Crusaders here in a few minutes with Delbach and American Single Malts. Stacy does not have a show tonight, so catch her next Sunday. All those things. Thanks, folks, and we will see you next time. Until then, Slàinté, y'all.